Welcome to Unit 2, Chapter 4, Measurement Systems, Exercise 4-1, Question 2. Similar to what we've done with Question 1, I'm going to go through some of these videos to explain to you each question that are found for Question 2. We look at the instructions because, they're kind of important. So what they want us to do is convert the following to a format suitable for a recipe ingredient list. In other words, pounds and ounces, pints, etc. So unlike question 1 where we went to a decimal equivalent, now we're going to take a decimal equivalent and go to the recipe format. And as always, the instructions let us know a few things, and here we need to round off, but round off is indicated in brackets, so each individual question may have a different rounding demand to it. So question 1, we will take 1.815 pounds, and we want to convert it to pounds and ounces, rounding it off to the nearest ounce. Just like in the other question, there's a no-brainer part. Whether we're expressing it in its decimal format or its pound and ounces format, we are still going to have one entire whole pound. Now we need to deal with the decimal 815 pounds, and to do that, we need to know the relationship. And the relationship is 16 ounces per pound. But this time, we will multiply decimal 815 by 16, and we get decimal 1304. And since 16 represents ounces, 13.04 represents ounces, so it goes over here. We get 1 pound, 13.04 ounces, but we need to round off to the nearest ounce. So we look at the nearest ounce, which is the 3 and the 13. The number immediately following is a 0, not enough to change anything. We drop all of that, and we end up with 1 pound, 13 ounces. Next one, 2.875 imperial quarts. We want to go into imperial quarts and ounces. Of course, no brainer. We're going to have 2 whole imperial quarts no matter what format we write it out in. And then we simply need to deal with the decimal 875, the relationship between ounces and imperial quarts, 40. So we take decimal 875 and multiply it by 40, the amount of ounces in an imperial quart, and we get 35. We add it over here, no rounding needed. So 2.875 imperial quarts equals 8 imperial quarts and 35 ounces. 2.875 US quarts, and we want to take them the same direction, US quarts and ounces. We're going to get 2 full US quarts. That's not going to change, but we deal with the decimal 875 US quarts. The relationship between ounces and US quarts is 32. So we multiply decimal 875 by 32. It gives us 28 ounces, and that goes over there. So 2.875 US quarts is equal to 2 US quarts and 28 ounces. Next up, 1.26 pounds. We want to go to pounds and ounces. Again, 1 whole pound no matter how we refer to it. We're going to take the decimal 26 and we're going to multiply it by the amount of ounces in a pound. That certainly hasn't changed. It's still 16. So decimal 26 divided by 16 gives us 4.16. So we get 1 pound, 4.16 ounces. But here we need to round to the nearest half ounce. So we end up with 1 pound and 4 ounces even. Here's 4 whole ounces. The half ounce would be over here. We would need to have a decimal 5, but it's only a 1. So 4 is closer to 4 ounces instead of 4.5 ounces, which is why we end up with 1 pound, 4 ounces as a final rounded answer. 2.625 US gallons converted to US gallons and ounces. Again, 2 whole US gallons, that's not going to change. But what's our relationship between ounces and US gallons? It is indeed 128 ounces per US gallon. So decimal 625 times 128 gives us 80. And again, 80 represents ounces because our multiplier 128 represents ounces. So decimal 625 times 128 gives us 80 ounces. And we're just going to put it over here for a final answer of 2 US gallons and 80 ounces. Next up, 2.272 imperial gallons. We want to convert that to imperial gallons and ounces, rounding it off to the nearest ounce. That's right. We still have 2 imperial gallons. We will take decimal 272 imperial gallons and multiply it by its relationship with ounces, which in this case is 160. So decimal 272 times 160 gives us 43.52. And again, since we multiplied by 160 and 160 represents ounces, that's 43.52 ounces. We need to round this off to the nearest ounce. We have 43, therefore we look at this one here. 5 is enough to change it. We'll get rid of the 5 too. This will jump to 44, and we end up with 2 imperial gallons and 44 ounces. Next up, decimal 048 liters. And we want to convert that to milliliters, and then of course round it off to the nearest 5 milliliters. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply decimal 048 by the amount of milliliters in a liter. And again, our metric system, a friendly measurement system, we multiply by 1,000. And when we multiply decimal 048 by 1,000, we get 48. So 48 millimeters is what our milliliters, forgive me, is what our unrounded answer is. And if we need to round this to the nearest 5 milliliters, we're either going to get 45 milliliters or 50 milliliters. And 48 is closer to 50, so the final rounded answer should be 50 milliliters. Decimal 135 liters, let's convert that to milliliters. We're going to do the exact same thing we just did in the above question. We're going to take decimal 135 multiplied by 1,000. We get 135. We get 135 milliliters. It's already rounded to 5 milliliters. We no longer have to worry about that part. We move on to the next question. 3.662 liters, and we want to convert that into liters and milliliters. Well, we're back to our no-brainer part. We had 3 whole liters in its decimal. We're going to have 3 whole liters in its liter and milliliter equivalent. We're going to take decimal 662. We're going to multiply it by 1,000, the amount of milliliters in a liter. We get 662. That's going to go over here, but that needs to be rounded to the nearest 5 milliliters. So it's either going to be 3 liters and 660 milliliters or 3 liters and 665 milliliters. And since 660 is closer to 662, our final rounded answer for this ends up being 3 liters and 660 milliliters. So again, I hope I've been able to illustrate the importance of being familiar with the relationships and having a good calculator around so we can do the math that needs to be done. Of course, rounding, always being important in this course, is something that needs to be done with almost each one of these questions. So please be sure to brush up on your rounding skills before the next test.